Welcome everyone to Ladder Daily Digest. Ladder Daily Digest tries to highlight and promote creators. Today we have on Katherine Jeffries, who has written some books, and she's also done some TikToks. Welcome to the show, Katherine.
Hi, thank you.
Welcome, Katherine. Hi. So the thing that when Jean brought you to my attention, the subject was the TikToks, and it was narcissism. And so, is that the main focus of your TikToks? Is it like mental health in general, or is that kind of like what your focus is?
I think primarily it's bringing people's attention to toxic traits in other people. Obviously, I can't diagnose anyone, but I can bring their awareness to how it feels to be treated a certain way and to noticing patterns in behavior in those around them, and then bring them to how it feels for them and how to either work around people who have those toxic traits or to get the help and the support that they need to bring themselves to a stronger, more centered place in themselves.
Yeah.
To kind of have that radical acceptance if they are stuck in the relationship, but then also if they're not, give them that boost and that reassurance that they'd be better off outside of it.
Makes sense. And this is something that's really, I think, broadly appealing and broadly needed. But we do know in the church, if we're talking in, the kind of ex-Mormon sphere, the deconstruction sphere, it's really difficult to notice toxic traits like that. I think partly because of the way our doctrine works and the upbringing and just the obedience to authority. So it kind of doesn't really matter if someone's toxic or not, if they're above you. And so I kind of feel like, yeah, it broad appeal across the board, but I think a lot of us coming out of this will almost always know people that will kind of meet these traits, I guess. So
yeah, definitely. And you'll encounter a lot of toxic positivity.
Yeah.
And you'll think like, what's wrong with being happy? And yet this person is dismissing and overriding all of your emotions that they deem problematic. And so you want to blame yourself and say, well, I must be a negative person. I must be focusing on the wrong things, because what's wrong with somebody wanting me to be happy? There's a lot wrong with that.
Right. Yeah. So you're not a mental health. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Jean. Sorry, I thought you were going to ask a question. I don't know if you want to talk about or get into this too much, but I assume, so from what I understand, you're not a mental health professional. So this is all like personal experience and your journey figuring this stuff out to start, I guess, broadcasting about it or talking about it on social media. Yeah.
Yeah. I was raised in the Mormon church by a very grandiose, overt narcissist. A lot of, to put it mildly, a lot of intensity in the home. My mother is a very self-righteous narcissist. There are different facets of it. There are different ways it can manifest. And the way a narcissist manifests is basically based on the way they get fed. So they're the covert narcissists who are constant victims. The grandiose narcissist will be entitled to fame, to praise, to never being ever, wrong in any way.
And the heroes, I guess, if we're taking a storyline, we've got victims, we've got heroes.
They are main character energy in the worst way possible. And then there's self-righteous narcissists who kind of like love being a martyr. It's really strange. And of course, religion, there's a lot of spiritual abuse, a ton. There are also like communal narcissists who love to post about their projects and then treat everybody like crap behind the scenes. So they'll be like really involved in charities and post about all these charities that they, help. And then their personal relationships are in shambles and they're an absolute mess. So in breaking down these treatments and these conflicts within people, because you see, like, for instance, for a communal narcissist, you'll say, well, they're such a good person and they're such a giving person. And the community will see them as this hero, as this wonderful, giving human being. And you're calling yourself crazy or doubting yourself because they treat you like garbage. And so you'll try to earn them back and you'll try to make them see you as a good person too. And it'll begin that cycle of abuse and control that will make you feel less and less and less, because they will give you less and less and less the more you try.
So is there no fighting back?
No. I mean, if it makes you feel better, but a lot of times, especially, they can be very violent. So I wouldn't recommend that. I don't ever tell people to engage with narcissists because their fuse is, you never can tell. You never can tell if it'll actually trip it into something violent or something far more abusive. So the gray rock method of pulling back and just going.
Perfect.
Cool.
No, I was going to bring that up. I know I just wanted to, I guess, reiterate, bring my experience into it, that narcissists are willing to go full on crazy. Most of us have kind of an inner sense of how far is too far to go. And these people don't have that. So I just want to say, I agree with it's fuel to the fire is what I've realized, that even if you can get a really good jab in somewhere that maybe they really deserve, it's just more, for the covert narcissist in my life, more fuel for victimization. And this is how mean this person is to me, even though it was deserved. But yeah, so you mentioned gray rock, and that is, I think, the most common, or I've heard beige rock too. I don't know if there's a difference between those. If there is, you can let me know. Or no, it looks like you're shaking your head. No,
it's just, you just want to be as boring as possible. No, non-reactive.
Do you have any examples?
I remember, sorry, I was at Thanksgiving. It was my last Thanksgiving with my parents. And my father was, my whole family was extremely upset that I left the church. I left in 2012. And I had left the church thinking that there were answers. And so I was a little bit more public about my process, because I just thought, oh, I just need to ask the right person. And the right person will tell me what really is going on. And so when everyone just came up and with nothing, I said, I guess this isn't true. I guess I got to go. And I was using all church approved materials. Like, there were no, as far as I was aware, there were no groups. I didn't know about John Dehlin. I didn't know about any of these other things. So I just kind of felt in myself that I couldn't do it anymore. And in 2016, my dad came to Thanksgiving, and he was just hitting all of the nerves. And I had just gone to my best friend's gay wedding, and I was really supportive of him and his husband, and we were really close. And my dad was hitting on, LGBTQ plus issues and how it's an agenda. And then it was feminism, and then it was immigrants, and it was like everything that he could just hit on. And I just sat there and went, I didn't know that. No, I didn't know you thought that way. That's interesting.
That's hard.
Oh my gosh.
For some people, but I
yeah.
For who?
No, it was hard. And then a week later, I just went no contact. I said, I'm not doing this anymore, because he did this in front of my children, which I told him never to do. And he felt like he was the king of every castle he walked in. And of course, Mormons are kind of taught, well, you got to just proselyte. You can't just sit there. You can't just be polite. You have to, your eternities are dependent on how well you manage other people. Because if you stayed quiet, you're going to be held accountable for not holding that person accountable. So I can see, the mentality behind it, but the disrespect was such that I felt like it was really starting to hit my kids. Well, and so a week later,
it goes on for the other side too when you leave, because I know I felt that way as a member, and I always felt like an intense amount of guilt if I didn't speak up about something that I didn't like. But I never had the courage, really, or very rarely did I, and almost always it went really badly if I forced myself to speak up. And so now I find it easier to speak up, and now I feel like it's almost like past regret from times that I felt like such a coward, when I didn't. And those conversations would stay with me for days sometimes, that I didn't address or do anything about. And then on this side of things, I feel the same way, though. I've just kind of flipped on a lot of issues. And so I think the same kind of intense guilt that if someone says something really homophobic or sexist, that if I don't say something, I'm supporting it. And it's really important to me not to support those things anymore. And so I don't know, this kind of clicked together for me. It's partly why I've gone no contact with my father. I don't know if I would call him a narcissist at this point, but still a very toxic person. And he's someone I probably like your father. It's kind of the same thing, that just a conversation can't happen. And so it's really, I feel like cutting off. It took me a year to come to the conclusion that that's what I wanted to do permanently with my dad, but there's just no other way. Otherwise, I'm just putting myself in front of this harmful rhetoric and not having the ability to question it or push back at all. Like, he doesn't even let me speak hardly. So it's like I can barely even get a sentence out to even start going that route before it gets shut down. And so, yeah.
It's pretty tough to talk to somebody when they know that God is on their side.
Yeah.
They think they know.
And if anybody goes no contact with their parents, my first instinct isn't, why don't you try harder? My first instinct is, oh my gosh, so it must have been really bad.
Yeah.
It must have been really bad for someone to go no contact with a family member, because very few people want to believe the worst or want to believe that their parents are harming them and are incapable of loving them. It's just a really heartbreaking place to be. So I'm so sorry that you've had to make that decision.
Maybe you've thought this, maybe others too. I keep thinking, or I kept thinking, that there was something right to say. If I said the right thing, I just didn't express myself correctly or something. I don't know if that's a B thing or how common that is. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, because I think that's a media
I just kept
thing.
thinking there's hope.
It's a media thing. I think it's if you look at the history of like rom-coms or even movies like gosh, I don't know, like that aren't even rom-coms. I watched a couple the other weekend where it's usually a really crappy man, kind of a loser, doesn't have a whole lot going for him, is a jerk to people, pretty manipulative, and then he has this moment. Oh, usually he screws over a female protagonist, and then he realizes his life would be so much better with her. He does this big, grand apology, and then she has to come in and give him another chance, and then they're out and they're happy. And I think that that's something, especially for people raised on media in the 70s and 80s and 90s, of this quick turnaround. And once they see what's important, once they see how great you are, they're going to flip that switch and they're going to be amazing to you. And unfortunately, narcissists use that. They've caught on to that, and they will definitely tell you, oh, you were so close. You were so close. If you had tried just a little bit harder, if things had been perfect, if you hadn't gotten mad, then I wouldn't have had to yell at you. And I thought we were having a great day until you got upset about something I said. And so they'll play on that. It's breadcrumbing. They're pulling you in, and they're teasing you with how great it once was and how great it could be again if you just try harder. And they'll often say, oh, I'm going through a hard time, or I'm stressed out. And again, the media is reinforcing this idea that crappy people just need a little bit of a push or a little bit of a
light
come
bulb
to
moment.
Jesus. Yeah. And then the light will come on.
And faith affirming stories do that too a lot. There's the moment where, so I think it was, I never thought of that before. It really is coming from everywhere. It's coming from, I guess, the secular world, but also internally from the religious point of view, that there's a right thing today, or a scripture. I was living this way, and then I read the scripture and everything changed. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then if you look at the leadership, if you look at who the Mormon Church specifically is idolizing, telling you, yeah, Joseph Smith was just a little bit flawed. And you're like, oh my God. Or like Paul. Yeah. Paul in the Bible murdered people, like burned Christians. And they're like, well, God needed someone flawed to do this amazing work. And he turned it around, and he's just this wonderful person. And so we all think there's redemption.
So you think there's hope for me then? No, just kidding.
I haven't killed anybody yet. The furthest from a narcissist that I know, which is I appreciate a lot. Yeah. So what is there something that well, actually, I've been asking all the questions. Jean, do you have one? And I'll save mine for later.
Oh yeah. So TikTok's not that recent, right? When did you start TikToking?
Geez, I've been doing reels on Facebook. I should probably get my YouTube channel a little bit more.
Or when did you do any of those social media things? When did you start to do that?
2021.
So
you said, was that your deconstruction, or was it mostly just
that's 2012.
Facebook?
2012, yeah.
But 2020 was when I did the deep dive. When so I went no contact with my whole family in 2019. And it was through the pandemic that I was like, wow, they really don't they don't care. Like, they don't care that all of this crap is happening to my family. They haven't reached out. There's a global pandemic going on, and my son's high risk. Like, it was just a terrifying time, and I hadn't heard from them. And so I decided to just kind of do a deep dive. And that was when my eyes opened, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with disorders. I'm dealing with highly disordered human beings. And that's why nothing ever clicked. And I would clean their houses. I would watch their kids. I would drive out to see them, to help them and do projects and fix their homes and all this stuff. And nothing I ever did was good enough. And I was always getting attacked and always getting criticized. And so in 2020, I did that deep dive, and it was terrifying to actually start speaking out about it, because I had been called disloyal my entire life, forever even questioning the narcissist. So me speaking out and telling everybody what he was.
Public. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
it's risky.
I mean, that was the bridge. And I did it on purpose, mostly because I was like, I don't ever want you people in my life ever again. So here's the match and the bridges are gone. Like speaking out as I know I have absolutely demolished any chance. And it's kind of an anxious relief, but I know I did the right thing because you can't fix it. You can't fix them. And I know if I were to ever go back, they'd be like, that's what I thought. Of course you came back. And it would be even worse. So that, yeah, it was in 2021 that I really started it. And then I think TikTok came in maybe end of 2021. Yeah.
And what year did you write your first book?
I was 12.
Oh, there you go.
My first book got published.
Years ago is what you're saying.
What?
Just a few years ago.
You're right. I was only, yeah. It was, yeah, that was when I wrote my first book. My first book was published in 2007, I believe. So yeah, so I've always been writing. So this is just kind of
Catherine's a fiction writer. We didn't say that because we were, but you can also learn more about that on your same TikTok streams. You kind of go into
social media. Yeah, if you follow me on social media, I'll keep you updated. Yeah,
and we will have links to maybe a book or two, and your TikTok and your channel if you promise to post more things there.
Okay. Yeah. Love to. Thank you.
I know you said that you had a book that before we were talking that had a really interesting premise to me, which is about with the supernatural, like a child abuse fighter team.
Yeah.
That was a really terrible way to put it. But yeah, I was like, I'm down for that. I'm down for people who, and I understand the meaning behind that.
Yeah.
I wanted to know if I could ask one final question, and then maybe Jean, if you have a final question, and then we'll have you wrap up with anything else that you would want to share to your current or potential new audience. So my question is, what of your content has been the most helpful for people just barely starting to explore this? Have you noticed any trends that way of the thing that makes it click for people, or anything else helpful?
I think the more helpful content was when I because modeling is so important. A lot of us just haven't had proper modeling in terms of how to communicate, how to conflict manage, and so I started to model for people how to gray rock. How to the actual responses that you can give, facial expressions you can make when you're confronted with a volatile narcissist, and how to navigate family functions, how to just keep yourself completely blank, which is so hard to do. And then just making people feel congratulated for doing it and making them feel seen for doing it. Because that's the thing, you feel so invisibilized in these moments. That's not a word, but you feel invisibilized because your feelings do not matter. Your views do not matter. No one's taking care of you. No one's considering you or integrating your experience into the dynamic. And so to have to choke yourself and silence yourself and let them run rampant, it's really important that people feel that was the strong thing to do. That was the mature thing to do. And that they are the wise one in that situation.
That's good. Especially when it comes to protecting themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Did you put any narcissistic behavior in any of your novels?
Yes.
Great question.
Was that a way of release? Was that therapy for you?
It's really hard because I find because my father was a corporate litigator for New York. Like he represented, places like Chubb Insurance, like these massive corporations. So he was just incredibly manipulative and very verbose. And so to have cataloged all of that and to put it somewhere and then to put it in a character, it's extremely difficult to do because it brings up a lot for me. And then also to watch that character get away with stuff and continue to manipulate, and to have the main characters have to sort through it's tough because I want to punch her in the face. I want to get to the end where she gets it. But yeah, it is difficult, but it's also very interesting to see how much I internalized it to the point where it is somewhat a part of me that I can do fairly easily. Or seamlessly anyway.
Right.
Okay. What final things or advice or thoughts would you like to give people who are looking into this or who would find your channel helpful? What I'll give you the final closing.
I would definitely do the deep dive. I would definitely, don't shame yourself for going down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what was what and what tactic they were using at any given moment and how they worded things, because narcissists tend to have a script. So if you need to just, binge all of this content wherever you find it, whether it's on YouTube or books, definitely feeling like you're not alone in that process and that was exactly what somebody else went through. It's so important. So there is a balance, of course. I don't want you to go, too deep and then be obsessive about it, but definitely find that validation from what other people have been through. And if you can afford it, if you have access, please find a therapist who can help you with EMDR or hypnotherapy or something that will get to the core beliefs that have been corrupted by this kind of abuse and help you sort it out to where, because it is invasive, it is systemic. It really does get into the core of you, and you can unearth all of that, sort it out, and find those beautiful parts of yourself that are still in there and they still matter, and they need to feel safe to come out, and you deserve to be your fullest self. So please definitely seek out professional help if you can, but if you can't, find people who've been through it, who will validate you and tell you that what happened was real and it wasn't your fault.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we do need to have these people or certain people out of our lives for us to be ourselves. Sometimes we really just can't with certain people around. Thank you for that. And when you say deep dive, you're talking about the research deep dive about narcissism. Do you want to toss out any quick other references, or do you do that on your channel where you recommend books or other things?
I do duet people sometimes. I think the main people, one person you should start with is Dr. Ramani, Ramani. So she's on YouTube. She's also on TikTok. She is a doctor. She's been, done clinical studies of all of this stuff. She's incredibly resourceful. So I would hit her up first, and then you can branch out from there. But she's a great place to start.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, Jean, are we any last questions from you?
So I almost have one thing that I was debating whether we should talk about it afterwards or right now. We could always cut it out if it's no good. But I, want to get things that I want, right? I want things to happen, and I want those things. And sometimes when I hear people talk about narcissists, I wonder, am I being narcissistic when I try to get things that I want, right? And so I have this, not a fear, but thinking that if Dan Vogel will ever write a book about me, he would say that I was a pious narcissist. So I don't know.
I think that's a good question, because I mean, as humans, we need other people, and so sometimes, especially if what you're needing, or we're not talking about generic goals, but I'm wanting something from a person. Am I being a narcissist for what? Do you want to address that, Katherine? I think a lot of people will think that and wonder that.
I think we all want to manipulate, as we don't really grow out of that as children. We know exactly how to manipulate to get our needs met. I have to catch myself doing it. I did a couple years ago. I remember my son saying, I don't like meatloaf. And I was like, oh, come on, that's not true. Just try it. And I was like, that's gaslighting. And I just caught myself like, well, he said he doesn't like it. Ask him, can you please try a bite? Or if you have 3 bites, I'll give you a little bit extra, Cheez-Its or whatever. Like I've definitely caught myself saying, okay, I'm not going to invade or discount his experience. That's manipulation, but I can sweeten the deal for him to get what I want out of this. So I think when you want something you can negotiate, you can compromise. But if you're going to say you're dumb, that's ridiculous, calm down, stop overreacting, it's not that big of a deal, then yes, that is where you are invading someone else's space and crossing a million boundaries in terms of trying to change their mind. Like you're trying to change their, sensory intake. You're trying to change their memory. You're trying to change what they want for themselves, instead of saying, I want this and that is separate from you. But if you help me get it, we can get here with it, or I can sweeten the deal, or I'll pay you back, whatever the case. But if you're trying to get it for less, then you're probably manipulating them and taking from them a little bit too much.
Right. And actually now that leads into one last question, hopefully. Okay. So in doing those things, it would take away the authentic person, right? So what did you do to reclaim your authentic person, your authentic self?
Oh, man. I think my first step there's been a lot of steps. Was getting those people out of my life, and truly stepping back from them. And then for me, it was speaking out. It was giving myself uninterrupted, just an uninterrupted voice, and making
Permission to speak.
videos. Yeah, making those videos is me, because one of the things that my father made me feel was that I wasn't saying it right, and he would pull my words apart and take one word that I said and redefine it and say, or get offended by it. And so I just felt like, am I not saying this right? Like, I don't understand. And that's true with any narcissistic person, is that you will feel like, did I not say that clearly? Did I use the wrong words? Because I feel like I was pretty clear about my boundaries, or I felt like I was pretty clear about my defense. And so the one big thing was actually getting the feedback from people of, wow, you put that in such a accessible form. Like, you really made sense of that so simply for me. Thank you. And so that was, and as a writer, that's important for me to know that I'm communicating clearly. So there has been a lot of little steps of reclaiming myself, but that was a good first one, of putting my experience out there and having people go, oh my gosh, that was my experience. You made perfect sense of my experience. That was a good first step.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Katherine, for coming on our show. I hope everyone is able to glean a little bit out of this. And if you need to protect yourself, protect yourself. And if you need to think about behaving better, then start behaving better. And if you like what we're doing, and if you want to, like and subscribe, and, Maven and I have a tip jar in the description, and also in the description will be links to some of Katherine's media that she mentioned, and anything else that we can think of that maybe we missed. And everybody have a great rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Thank you.